Number 15. D.B. Cooper. On November 24, 1971, an unidentified man arrived at the Portland airport. He said his name was Dan Cooper and boarded a flight heading to Seattle that contained 36 other passengers. Once the plane was in the air, he gave a note to one of the stewardesses that read, "I have a bomb in my briefcase." He then told the stewardess to sit down and revealed a mix of batteries and wires in his briefcase. He told the captain that if he didn't receive $200,000 and 4 parachutes, he would set off the bomb. His demands were met and the plane landed in Seattle and all the passengers were let off the plane. It then headed back to Portland, which is Cooper and the crew on board. He then gave $2,000 to each of the crew and then jumped off the plane. He was never seen again. Number 14. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. On February 2, 1959, 9 skiers died in the Ural Mountains. Their tent was ripped open from the inside and 5 of them froze to death very near it. Even worse, 4 of them had major injuries which included fractured skulls and broken ribs. And worst of all, 1 was missing her tongue and eyes. 4 of them were discovered in clothing that belonged to other hikers, and after being tested, high levels of radiation were found. There were no external injuries to any of the bodies. Number 13. The Hessdalen Lights. In 1997, a man camping with his family in Norway went outside to brush his teeth when he noticed 3 lights in a triangle formation that were flickering. The lights just floated there, and after a few minutes the light disappeared. He was one of the many people who witnessed the Hessdalen Lights. Records of these lights date back to the 19th century. They have been reported in blue, red, and yellow. In the 1980s, there were 20 eyewitnesses per week. Scientists have been studying the lights for years and have still never been able to come up with an explanation. Number 12. The Beauvais Island Lifeboat. Beauvais Island is one of the most isolated places on Earth, located in the South Atlantic. The island is inhabitable since plant life is unsustainable there, but when a British expedition came from South Africa in 1964, they discovered an abandoned lifeboat. Oars, wood, a drum, and a copper tank were found near the boat. The boat was in good condition and had no identifiable marks on it. 2 years later, when another expedition was sent to the island, the boat and the contents had disappeared. Number 11. The murder of Marvin Brandland. On Halloween 1982, Marvin Brandland opened the door to a man wearing a mask who said, "Trick or treat, give me your money or I'll shoot." Brandland and his wife thought it was a prank, so he tried to remove the mask, but he wouldn't let him. The masked man entered the house and pulled out a gun. He demanded the money in the safe that was in their basement. The Brandlands became very suspicious that it had to be someone they were close to because very few people knew about the safe. Because of this, Brandland still thought it was a prank, so he made a grab for the gun. The masked man then shot Marvin in the throat before fleeing the house and dropping his mask. His wife was so traumatized by seeing her husband die that she died only a few months later. The murder is still unsolved. Number 10. The Oakville Blobs. On August 7, 1994, jelly-like blobs that were half the size of a grain of rice fell at a farm in Oakville, Washington. An analysis of the blobs found that they had once been alive. A lab technician said they appeared to contain human white blood cells. The blobs caused his kitten to die and members of his family felt nauseous. Number 9. The Locked Room Murder. Isidor Fink was a Polish immigrant who lived in New York City. He owned and lived in a laundromat which he kept the windows nailed shut and the doors locked due to a fear of burglars. On March 9, 1929, his neighbor heard screaming and the sound of a struggle. Once a policeman arrived, he was unable to enter due to Fink's security precautions, so after noticing a transom window above the front door, he boosted a boy through it. Fink was found dead in the back of the laundromat. He had been shot twice in the chest and 1 in the left hand. The wound in his hand confirmed that he had not been shot through the window. It was deemed an impossible to solve mystery by the police commissioner. Number 8. Foo Fighters. The term Foo Fighters was applied to all of the UFOs seen during World War II. In 1942, a Royal Air Force pilot was flying over France when he noticed 2 strange-looking lights flying towards his aircraft. Soon after, he realized that the light was following him and was perfectly repeating all the moves he made while in the air. The pilot was unable to evade the light no matter what he did. The lights also kept an even space between them when they were following him. After several miles, they disappeared. This happened only 4 months after Marines in the Solomon Islands reported seeing 150 silver-colored flying objects through the sky. The report said the objects were making strange noises and didn't have the tails that airplanes normally do. Number 7. The mysterious death of Chris Jenkins. On Halloween 2002, this University of Minnesota student was visiting a bar in downtown Minneapolis. After leaving the bar, he vanished without a trace. 4 months later, his body was discovered in the Mississippi River, still in his Halloween costume. Since he was heavily drunk, the police originally thought it was an accident or suicide, but after his parents pressed for a deeper investigation, it was reclassified as a homicide. The possible theory is that he was one of the victims in the Smiley Face murders. During this time period, 40 male college students were victims in drowning deaths. In some of these cases, smiley face graffiti was found near where the victims had drowned. It was also thought that the victims were drugged before being thrown into the body of water to make it look like an accident. Number 6. The disappearance of Steve Damon. In 1955, Marilyn Damon took her 2-year-old son and 7-month-old daughter to a supermarket in New York. She left them outside while she was shopping. After returning 10 minutes later, she discovered that her children were gone. The carriage that her daughter was in was found a block and a half away. Even though she was still inside, her son was nowhere to be found. He was never seen again. It is completely possible that he is now grown up under a new identity, unaware that he was taken from his real family, but we'll never know. Number 5. God's Banker. On June 18, 1982, Roberto Calvi, whose nickname was God's Banker due to his work with the Vatican, was found hung from the scaffolding under a bridge in London. He was the chairman of Italy's second largest bank. To warn him of a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions in which the church will suffer the gravest damage. Also in that month, the bank collapsed with $1.5 billion in debt. The Vatican, who claimed some responsibility, paid $224 million to creditors of the bank. 8 days before his death, Calvi fled to London on a private plane. He had been missing since then until he was discovered under that bridge with 10,000 euros and bricks in his pockets. His murderers are allegedly protected under the P2 Masonic Lodge, who have massive power in Italy. The P2 Masonic Lodge is made up of politicians, bank presidents, top security, and so on. Number 4. The Ellen More Lighthouse Mystery. In 1900, only 3 lighthouse keepers were living on the Scottish island of Ellen More. On December 26th, a supply ship arrived on the island, but the lighthouse keepers were not waiting for them at the dock. The crew blew the ship's horn and shot a flare, but still no one came. A replacement lighthouse keeper was sent to investigate. Once he reached the lighthouse, he noticed that the door was unlocked and inside, 2 of the 3 waterproof jackets were gone. In the kitchen, he found the remains of a meal and a chair lying on the floor. He eventually found the lighthouse log and read one of the final entries. It was for December 12th. It said that the island was hit with the most severe winds that the keeper had ever experienced. It also said that one of the other keepers were very quiet and the other one was crying. Further entries said the storm continued for a few days, and the last entry said, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." The lighthouse was fully visible from a nearby island, and no storms were ever reported during the days of those entries. Number 3. Who put Bella in Wych Elm? On April 18, 1943, in the Hagley Woods in England, 4 boys were looking for birds' nests when they discovered a human skull inside an elm tree. They were trespassing, so they put the skull back, but one of the boys told his parents, who told the police. They found a human skeleton, a shoe, a wedding ring, fragments of clothing, and a severed hand nearby. According to forensics, she had been dead for 18 months and had been killed from asphyxiation. After that, graffiti started to appear. It read, "Who put Luella down the Wych Elm?" Another said, "Hagley Wood Bella." They were written in the same handwriting, which raised the question, who put Bella in the Wych Elm? There has been many theories about the woman and why she was killed, like she was part of a spy ring or she was killed due to a black magic ritual, but we'll never know. Number 2. The Green Children. In the 12th century in Woolpit, England, 2 unusual children appeared. They spoke an unknown language and they had green skin. They were taken and baptized. The boy died shortly after, but the girl survived and eventually learned English. She explained that they came from St. Martin's Land, an underground community where everyone is green. The strangest part of all is that there are multiple reports of these green children. Number 1. Jack the Ripper. He is easily the most popular and notorious serial killer. In 1888, he would murder his victims in the Whitechapel district of London. He is responsible for the deaths of 5 people, and all of them were prostitutes who had their throats slit and were mutilated. In 3 cases, Jack the Ripper took a souvenir being an internal organ of his victim. The law was never able to solve this mystery, even though they received a letter from Jack the Ripper which contained a half-preserved kidney. There are over 100 theories on who this killer is. Got an idea for a top 15 list? Leave it in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe for future videos. Thanks for watching.